What's good, YouTube? Today is day 54 of reading every single day for 30 minutes for the rest of my life. Tonight we got The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm loving this book so far. Yeah, we're at the top of page 124. Yeah, let's get into it. Alexa, set a timer for 30 minutes.
30-minute timer started. You've got this. Tokyo.
Tokyo's not my name. Sorry. They now hurried forward again, delighted with the thought of climbing out for a while above the roof of the forest. The path dipped and then again began to climb upwards, leading them at last to the foot of the steep hillside. There it left the trees and faded into the turf. The woods stood all round and hill like thick hair that ended sharply in a circle round a shaven crown. The hobbits led their ponies up, winding round and round until they reached the top. They stood and gazed about them. The air was gleaming and sunlit but hazy, and they could not see to any great distance. Near at hand the mist was now almost gone, though here and there it lay in hollows of the wood, and to the south of them, out of a deep fold cutting right across the forest, the fog still rose like steam of wisps and white smoke. That said, said Merry, pointing with his hand. That is the line of the Withwindle. It comes down out of the downs and flows southwest through the midst of the forest, to join the Brandywine below Hayes End. We don't want to go that way. The Withwindle Valley is said to be the queerest part of the whole wood, the center from which all the queerness comes from, as it were. The others looked in the direction that Merry pointed out, but they could see little but mist over the damp and deep-cut valley, and beyond it the southern half of the forests faded from view. The sun on the hilltop was now getting hot. It must have been about 11 o'clock, but the autumn haze still prevented them from seeing much in other directions. In the west, they could not make out either the line of the hedge or the valley of the Brandywine beyond it. Northward, where they looked most hopefully, they could see nothing that might be the line of the Great East Road, for which they were making. They were on an island in a sea of trees, and the horizon was veiled. On the southeastern side, the ground fell very steeply, as if the slopes of the hill were continued far under the trees, like island shores that really are the sides of a mountain rising out of deep waters. They sat on the green edge and looked out over the woods below them. While they ate their midday meal, as the sun rose and past noon, they glimpsed far off in the east the grayed green lines of the downs that lay beyond the old forest on that side. That cheered them greatly. For it was good to see a sight of anything beyond the woods' borders, though they did not mean to go that way, if they could help it. The Barrow Downs had a reputation in Hobbit legend as the forest itself. Water break. Water is always good. Gotta stay hydrated. Okay. Where was I? Alright. At length they made up their minds to go on again. The path that had brought them to the hill reappeared on the northward side, but they had not followed it far, for they became aware that it was bending steadily to the right. Soon it began to descend rapidly, and they guessed that it must actually be heading towards the Withwindle Valley. Not at all the direction they wished to take. After some discussion, they decided to leave this misleading path and strike northward. For although they had not been able to see it from the hilltop, the road must lie that way, and it could not be many miles off. Also northward, and to the left of the path, the land seemed to be drier and more open, climbing up to slopes where the trees were thinner, and the pines' firs replaced the oaks and ashes, and under strange and nameless trees of the denser wood. At first their choice seemed to be good. They got along at a fair speed, though whenever they got a glimpse of the sun in an open glade, they seemed unaccountably to have veered eastwards. But after a time the trees began to close in again, just where they had appeared from a distance to be thinner and less tangled. Then deep folds in the ground were discovered unexpectedly, like the ruts of great giant wheels, or wide moats and sunken roads, long disused and choked with brambles. These lay usually right across their line of march, and could only be crossed by scrambling down and out again, which was troublesome and difficult with their ponies. Each time they climbed down they found the hollow filled with thick bushes and matted undergrowth, which somehow would not yield to the left, but only gave way when they turned to the right, and they had to go some distance along the bottom before they could find a way up the further bank. Each time they clambered out, the trees seemed deeper and darker, and always to the left and upward it was most difficult to find a way, and they were forced to the right and downwards. After an hour or two they had lost all clear sense of direction, though they knew well enough they had long ceased to go northward at all. They were being headed off and were simply following a course chosen for them, eastwards and southwards, into the heart of the forest and not out of it. The afternoon was wearing away when they scrambled and stumbled into a fold that was wider and deeper than any they had yet met. It was so steep and overhung that it proved impossible to climb out of it again, either forwards or backwards, without leaving their ponies and their baggage behind. All they could do was follow the fold downwards. The ground grew soft, and in places boggy. Springs appeared in the banks, and they soon found themselves following a brook that trickled and babbled through a weedy bed. Then the ground began to fall rapidly, and the brook, growing strong and noisy, flowed and leaped swiftly downhill. They were in a steep, dim-lit gully overarched by trees high above them. After stumbling along for some way along the stream, they came quite suddenly out of the gloom. As if through a gate, they saw the sunlight before them. Coming to the opening, they found that they had made their way down through a cleft in a high, steep bank, almost a cliff, as if its feet was a wide space of grass and reeds, and in the distance could be glimpsed another bank almost as steep. A golden afternoon of late sunshine lay warm and drowsy upon the hidden land between. In the midst of it there were lazily a dark river of brown water bordered with ancient willows, arched over the willows, blocked with fallen willows, and flecked with thousands of faded willow leaves. The air was thick with them, fluttering yellow from the branches, for there was a warm and gentle breeze blowing softly in the valley, and the reeds were rustling and the willow boughs were creaking. "Well, now I have at least some notion of where we are," said Mary. "We have come almost in the opposite direction to which we intended. This is the river Withwindle. I will go on and explore." He passed out into the sunshine and disappeared into the long grasses. After a while he reappeared, and reported that there was fairly solid ground between the cliff foot and the river. In some places, firm turf went down to the water's edge. "What's more," he said, "there seems to be something like a footpath winding along on this side of the river. If we turn left and follow it, we shall be bound to come out on the east side of the forest eventually." "I dare say," said Pimpin. "That is, if the track goes on so far and does not simply lead us into the bog and leave us there. Who made the track, do you suppose, and why? I am sure it is not for our benefit. I am getting very suspicious of this forest and everything in it, and I begin to believe all the stories about it. And have you any idea how far eastward we should have to go?" "No," said Mary, "I haven't. I don't know in the least how far down the Withwindle we are, or who could possibly come here often enough to make a path along it, but there is no other way out that I can see or think of." There being nothing else for it, they filed out, and Merry led them to the path he had discovered. Everywhere the reeds and grasses were lush and tall, in places far above their heads. But once found, the path was easy to follow, as it turned and twisted, picking out the sounder ground among the bogs and pools. Here and there it passed over other rills, running down gullies into the Withwindle out of the higher forest lands, and at these points there were tree trunks or bundles of brushwood laid carefully across. The hobbits began to feel very hot. There were armies of flies of all kinds buzzing around their ears, and the afternoon sun was burning on their backs. At last they came suddenly into a thin shade. Great gray branches reached across the path. Each step forward became more reluctant than the last. Sleepiness seemed to be creeping out of the ground and up their legs, and falling softly out of the air upon their heads and eyes. Frodo felt his chin go down and his head nod. Just in front of him, Pippin fell forward to his knees. Frodo halted. "It's no good," he heard Merry Pippin saying. "Can't go another step without rest. Must have a nap. It's cool under the willows. Less flies." Frodo did not like the sound of this. "Come on," he cried. "We can't have a nap yet. We must get clear of the forest first." But the others were too far gone to care. Beside them, Sam stood yawning and blinking stupidly. Suddenly, Frodo himself felt Suddenly, Frodo himself felt sleep overwhelming him. His head swam. There now seemed hardly a sound in the air. The flies had stopped buzzing. Only a gentle noise on the edge of hearing, a soft fluttering as of a song half-whispered, seemed to stir in the boughs above. He lifted his heavy eyes and saw leaning over him a huge willow tree, old and hoary. Enormous it looked, its sprawling branches going up like reaching arms with many long-fingered hands, its knotted and twisted trunk gaping in wide fissures that creaked faintly as the boughs moved. The leaves fluttering against the bright sky dazzled them, and he toppled over, lying where he fell upon the grass. Merry and Pippin dragged themselves forward and lay down with their backs to the willow trunk. Behind them the great cracks gaped wide to receive them as the tree swayed and creaked. They looked up at the gray and yellow leaves, moving softly against the light and singing. They shut their eyes, and it seemed that they could almost hear words, cool words, saying something about water and sleep. They gave themselves up to the spell and fell fast asleep at the foot of the great gray willow. Frodo lay a while fighting with the sleep that was so overpowering him. Then, with an effort, he struggled to his feet again. He felt a compelling desire for cool water. "Wait for me, Sam," he stammered. "Must bathe feet a minute." Half in a dream, he wandered forward to the riverside of the tree, where great winding roots grew out into the stream, like gnarled dragonets straining down to drink. He straddled one of these and paddled his hot feet in the cool brown water, and there he too suddenly fell asleep with his back against the tree. That's funny. Sam sat down and scratched his head, and yawned like a cavern. He was worried. The afternoon was getting late, and he thought this sudden sleepiness uncanny. "There's more behind this than sun and warm air," he muttered to himself. "I don't like this great big tree. I don't trust it. Hark at it singing about sleep now. This won't do at all." He pulled himself to his feet and staggered off to see what had become of the ponies. He found that 2 had wandered on a good way along the path. He had just caught them and brought them back towards the others, when he heard 2 noises, one loud and the other one soft but very clear. One was the splash of something heavy falling into the water. The other was a noise like the snick of a lock when a door quietly closes fast. He rushed back to the bank. Frodo was the water close to the edge, and a great tree root seemed to be over him and holding him down, and he was not struggling. Sam gripped him by the jacket and dragged him from under the root, and then, with difficulty, hauled him onto the bank. Almost at once he woke and coughed and spluttered. "Do you know, Sam?" he said at length. "The beastly tree threw me in. I felt it. The big root just twisted round and tipped me in." "You were dreaming, I expect, Mr. Frodo," said Sam. "You shouldn't sit in such a place if you feel sleepy." "What about the others?" Frodo asked. "I wonder what sort of dreams they are having." They went round to the side of the tree, and then Sam understood the click that he had heard. Pippin had vanished. The crack by which he had laid himself had closed together, so that not a chink could be seen. Merry was trapped. Another crack had closed about his waist. His legs lay outside, but the rest of him was inside a dark opening, the edges of which gripped like a pair of pincers. Oh my god, this is kind of scary. Frodo and Sam beat first upon the tree trunk where Pippin had lain. They then struggled frantically to pull open the jaws of the crack that held poor Merry. It was quite useless. Damn. "What a foul thing to happen!" cried Frodo wildly. "Why did we ever come to this dreadful forest? I wish we were all back at Crickhollow." He kicked the tree with all of his strength, heedless of his own feet. A hardly perceptible shiver ran through the stem and up into the branches, and leaves rustled and whispered, but with a sound now of faint and far-off laughter. "I suppose we haven't got an axe among our luggage, Mr. Frodo?" asked Sam. "I brought a little hatchet for chopping firewood," said Frodo. "That wouldn't be much use." "Wait a minute," cried Sam. Yeah. Damn. Okay. First yawn of the night. "What a foul thing to happen!" cried Frodo wildly. "Why did we ever come into this dreadful forest? I wish we were all back at Crickhollow." He kicked his feet with all of his strength, heedless of his own feet. A hardly perceptible shiver ran through the stem and up into the branches. The leaves rustled and whispered, but with a sound now of faint and far-off laughter. "I suppose we haven't got an axe among our luggage, Mr. Frodo?" asked Sam. "I brought a little hatchet for chopping firewood," said Frodo. "That wouldn't be much of use, but—" "Wait a minute!" cried Sam, struck by an idea suggested by firewood. "We might do something with fire." "We might," said Frodo doubtfully. "We might succeed in roasting Pippin alive inside." "We might try to hurt or frighten this tree to begin with," said Sam fiercely. "If I don't let him go, I'll have it down. If I have to gnaw it." He ran to the ponies and before long came back with 2 tinder boxes and a hatchet. Quickly they gathered dry grass and leaves and bits of bark and made a pile of broken twigs and chopped sticks. These they heaped against the trunk on the far side of the tree from the prisoners. As soon as Sam had struck a spark into the tinder, it kindled the dry grass and flurry of flame, and smoke went up. The twigs crackled. Little fingers of fire licked against the dry, scored rind of the ancient tree and scorched it. A tremor ran through the whole willow. The leaves seemed to hiss above their head with a sound of pain and anger. A loud scream came from Merry, and far from inside the tree they heard Pippin give a muffled yell. Put it out, cried Merry. "He'll squeeze me in 2 if you don't. He says so." "Who? What?" shouted Frodo, rushing around the other side of the tree. Put it out, begged Merry. The branches of the willow began to sway violently. There was a sound as of a wind rising and spreading outwards of the branch of all the other trees round about, as they had dropped a stone into the quiet slumber of the river valley, and set up ripples of anger that ran out over the whole forest. Wow. Sam kicked at the little fire and stamped out the sparks, but Frodo, without any they done messed up the whole forest. All the trees are mad. Sam kicked at the little fire and stamped out the sparks, but Frodo, without any clear idea of why he did so, or what he hoped for, ran along the path crying, "Help, help, help!" It seemed to him that he could hardly hear the sound of his own shrill voice. It was blown away from him by the willow wind and drowned in a clamor of leaves. As soon as the words left his mouth, he felt desperate, lost, and witless. Suddenly he stopped. There was an answer, or so he thought, but it seemed to come from behind him, away the path further back into the forest. He turned round and listened, and soon there could be no doubt. Someone was singing a song. A deep, glad voice was singing carelessly and happily, but it was singing nonsense. Hey dole, merry dole, ring a dolly dole, ring a dong, a hop along, fally long willow, tom bolly jolly tom, bombadillo. Half hopeful and half afraid of some new danger, Frodo and Sam now both stood still. Suddenly, out of a long string of nonsense words, or so they seemed, the voice rose up loud and clear and burst into this song. Hey, come, merry dole, 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 my darling. Frodo and Sam stood as if enchanted. The wind puffed out. The leaves hung silently against on stiff branches. There was another burst of song, and then suddenly, hopping and dancing along the path, there appeared above the reeds of an old battered hat, with a tall crown and a long blue feather stuck in the band. With another hop and a bound, there came into view a man, or so it seemed. At any rate, he was too large and heavy for a hobbit, if not quite tall enough for one of the big people, though he made noise enough for one, stumping along the great yellow boots of his thick legs, and charging through grass and rushes like a cow going down to drink. He had a blue coat and a long brown beard. His eyes were blue and bright, and his face was red as a ripe apple, but ceased into 100 of wrinkles of laughter. In his hands he carried a large leaf, as on a tray a small pile of white water lilies. "Help!" cried Frodo and Sam, running towards him with their hands stretched out. "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Steady there!" cried the old man, holding up one hand, and they stopped short as if they had been struck stiff. "Now, my little fellows, where you be going off to? Puffing like a bellows?" "What's the matter here, then? Do you know who I am?" "I'm Tom Bombadil. Tell me what's your trouble." Tom's in a hurry now. Don't you crush my lilies." "My friends are caught in a willow tree," cried Frodo breathlessly. "Master Merry's been squeezed in a crack," cried Sam. "What?" shouted Tom Bombadil, leaping up in the air. "Old Man Willow. Not worse than that, eh? That can soon be mended. I know the tune for him. Old Grey Willow Man." This guy's funny. This guy's gonna be funny. "I'll freeze his marrow cold. If he don't behave himself, I'll sing his roots off. I'll sing a wind up and blow leaf and branch away. Old Man Willow." Setting down his lilies carefully on the grass, he ran to the tree. Let me get some water. Damn, I'm thirsty. There he saw Merry's feet still sticking out. The rest had already been drawn further inside. Tom put his mouth to the crack and began singing into it in a low voice. They could not catch the words, but evidently Merry was aroused. His legs began to kick. Tom sprang away, and breaking off a hanging branch, smote the side of the willow with it. "You let them out again, Old Man Willow," he said. What be you a-thinking of? You should not be waking. Eat earth, dig deep, drink water, go to sleep. Bombadil is talking." Then he seized Merry's feet and drew him out of the suddenly widening crack. There was a tearing creak on the other crack split open, and out of it Pippin sprang as if he had been kicked. Then a loud snap, both cracks closed fast again. Damn, are they scared of him? A shudder ran through the tree from root to tip, and complete silence fell. "Thank you," said the hobbits one after another. Tom Bombadil burst out laughing. "Well, my little fellows," said he, stooping so that he peered into their faces, "you shall come home with me. The tale is all laden with yellow cream, honeycomb, and white bread and butter. Goldberry is waiting. Time enough for questions around the supper table. You follow after me as quick as you are able." With that he picked up his lilies, and then, with a beckoning wave of his hand, went hopping and dancing along the path eastward, still singing loudly and nonsensically. Too surprised and too relieved to talk, the hobbits followed after him as soon as they could. But after was not fast enough. Tom soon disappeared in front of them, and the noise of his singing got fainter and further away. Suddenly his voice came floating back to them as a loud hollow. Wow. Bro just vanished. Bro came, saved them, and then vanished. After that, the hobbits heard no more. Almost at once, the sun seemed to sink into the trees behind them. That's crazy. Why would he just vanish? So weird. Like, isn't it an enchantment? Like some type of magical? Like he wasn't really there. That's interesting. They thought of the slanting light of evening glittering on the Brandywine River, and the windows of Bucklebury beginning to gleam with hundreds of lights. Great shadows fell across them. Trunks and branches of trees hung dark and threatening over the path. White mists began to rise and curl on the surface of the river and stray about the roots of the trees upon its borders. Out of the very ground at their feet a shadowy steam arose and mingled with swiftly falling dusk. It became difficult to follow the path, and they were very tired. Their legs seemed laden. Strange, furtive noises ran among the bushes and reeds on either side of them, and if they looked up to the pale sky, they caught sight of queer, gnarled, and knobbly faces that gloomed dark against the twilight, and leered down at them from the high bank and edges of the wood. They began to feel that all this country was unreal, and that they were stumbling through an ominous dream that led to no awakening. Just as they felt their feet slowing down to a standstill, they noticed that the ground was gently rising. The water began to murmur. In the darkness they caught the white glimmer of foam where the river flowed over a short fall. Then suddenly the trees came to an end and the mists were left behind. They stepped out from the forest and found a wide sweep of grass swelling up before them. The river, now small and swift, was leaping merrily down to meet them. Glinting here and there in the light of the stars, which were already shining in the sky. The grass under their feet was smooth and short, as if it had been mown or shaven. The eaves of the forest behind were clipped and trim as a hedge. The path was now plain before them, well tended and bordered with stone. It wound up on the top of grassy knoll, now gray under the pale starry night, and there, still high above them, on a further slope, they saw the twinkling lights of a horse. Down again the path they went, and then up again, up a long smooth hillside of turf towards the light. Suddenly, a wide yellow beam flawed out brightly from a door that was opened. There was Tom Bombadil's house before them, up, down, under hill. Behind it, a steep shoulder of land gray and bare, and beyond that the dark shapes of the Barrow Downs stalked away into the eastern night. They all hurried forward, hobbits and ponies. Already half their wariness and all their fears had fallen from them. "Hey, come merry do! Come merry dole!" rolled out the song to greet them. Wow, he's just singing. Then another clear voice, as young as and ancient as springs, like the song of glad water flowing down the night from a bright morning of the hills, came falling like silver to meet them. And with that the song, the hobbits stood upon the threshold, and a golden light was all about them. This has to be some type of, like, old forest magic, some black magic. Okay, I'm gonna get some water. Stretch my back. Oh my gosh. Whew. Damn. Let's drink some water. We are at chapter 7. And they're about to enter the house. This Tom guy, this guy who sings a lot, and they saw him in the forest, and he did help them get away from the tree, the monster tree that was trying to eat them in the forest. And he said, hey, follow me. I got this house that I'm going to go, that you guys can come with me, and you guys can stay with me, and we'll eat and everything. And Frodo was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And then they start following him, and then he just like gets faster or something, and he disappears into the mist singing, and now they're just lost. And then there's that whole like little portion of them just being lost, which is really funny. It's real. I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like movies, they would cut that because they would be like, oh, you know what I mean, like, because of time. But like, it's more real. Oh, it looks like 30 minutes is up. I read that entire chapter. Alexa, stop. And that was day 54 of reading for 30 minutes every single day for the rest of my life. Let's go. I'm never stopping. We're going to keep going. And yeah, man. See y'all in day... we're at page 134. See y'all day 55. Peace.